Hello guys. So today I'm going to be going over the first 3 days of the unit, the area unit in Geometry K level. So the first day was area of quadrilaterals. So what I did was I had my kids, for their notes in their notebooks, split up their page in 5 different sections. Let's see. Okay, so kind of like that. Sorry if it's a little ugly. And the first thing we learned about was rectangles. So the formula for area of a rectangle is base times height, and I'm going to do 2 examples for every single one. So example 1 is super basic. If I have a rectangle that has a height of 15 and a base of 22, how do I find the area? Alright, and so we're going to do area equals my base is 22, my height is 15. So the area of 15 times 22 is 330. There's no units here, so I'm just going to put units squared. By the way, ignore my ugly nails. Sorry, I'm taking them off. Alright, example 2. So this time, if I have a rectangle and I give you the area as 19.2 and the height is 3.2, how would I figure out the base? Well, we would do 19.2 equals 3.2 times x, because that's what I'm going to call that. And we divide, so then x equals 6. And it would just be units here because it's not area. Next, we're going to talk about square. So you could totally use base times height for a square. However, the formal formula is side squared, because if it's a square, then the base and the height are the same. So for example 1, if I have a square and the diagonal is 14, well, I need to find the side length. It's a square, so remember, this is 45 and this is 45. How do you find the side? We are going to divide by the square root of 2. This is not going away. You need to have these memorized. I have to rationalize. So then I get 14 square roots of 2 over 2. And then that reduces to 7 square roots of 2. Now that's my S. So I still have to find the area. So 7 square roots of 2 squared. Remember that distributes. What is 7 squared? 49. What is the square root of 2 squared? So this is 98 units squared. Hi. Oh, sorry. Okay, so example 2. So for this one, if I give you a square and I tell you that the area is 320, how would you find each side? Well, if the area is 320 and that equals that, to get S by itself, we would square root both sides. So then I would get the square root of 320. Well, of course, it's a radical. I can simplify this. So that is going to be 64 times 5. What's the square root of 64? So 8 square roots of 5. And this would just be units because it's a side, not an area. Alright, next thing we are going to talk about is a parallelogram. So a parallelogram is base times height. And we are going to do example 1. I'm not very good at drawing parallelograms, so I apologize. And example. So the key thing about a parallelogram is your base and your height have to be with a right angle. Otherwise, because remember, your height is an altitude. An altitude has to be with a right angle. So right here, my base is 20 and my height is 12. So 20 times 12 is 240. And this time I gave you units, so it would be centimeters squared. Now for this next one, okay. All right. So this one, I have my base. Remember, it has to be with the right angle. Now I know there's a little bit of gap here, but this side is with the right angle. So your base is 5.8 and your height would be 3.5. Now you could call it backwards. You could say that is your base and that's your height. It wouldn't matter. The important part is we can't use 4 as the height because it's not with a 90-degree angle. So we put that in the calculator and we get 20.3 centimeters squared. Oh, that was an ugly. All right, next is our trapezoids. So this one is 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. And you will have to memorize all of these. You are not going to be given a formula chart. So for example 1, if I have a trapezoid, my area equals 1/2. My base 1 would be 6. And it doesn't matter which one's which. My base 2 is 9. Now I got to figure out my height. This is not my height because, again, a height is an altitude. So if I draw my right angle, I know 5. I don't know any angles. Oh, and I will tell you these are right angles. If this is 6, then this right here is 6. What would this side right here be? 3. Because 6 plus 3 is 9. And now look, I have a 3, a something, and a 5. So my height is 4. Now you put that in the calculator, and it's going to be 1/2 30. So my area is 30 units squared. For example 2, I wasn't supposed to tell you that. Oh well. So for this one, again, it's area equals, so pretend that 11's not there, 1/2. Your base 1 would be 15. If you didn't know that was 11, what I would do, draw my altitude. And if this is now a 30, 60, 90 triangle, I have 8 going around the 60. I would get 4. And to find my height, multiply by the square root of 3. So if this part was 4 and the whole thing is 15, what's the top? 11. And then my height is, my height is 4 square roots of 3. Now, when you put this in the calculator, you would do, I always do 0.5 instead of 1/2. 15 plus 11 times 4. I want an exact answer, so I'm not going to put the square root of 3 in. So I get the area is 52, and just add on the square root of 3. And don't forget your units, feet squared. Alright, last thing for quadrilaterals is a rhombus slash kite. Now something to remember about a rhombus is still a parallelogram. So you could still do this with a rhombus, but sometimes it's going to be easier to do diagonal, 1/2 diagonal times diagonal. So over here I'm going to do my rhombus example. And I'm going to tell you that this is 10 and this is 6. So if I tell you that, and I know it's a rhombus because all the sides are the same. One thing I know about rhombi are they have perpendicular diagonals. So then if this is 6, this is also 6. So I have 6, something, and 10. What is going to be my other diagonal? 8. So then my formula is diagonal 1, which is 6 plus 6 is 12. 1/2, let me do 1/2 first. 12. And diagonal 2, that's 8, so this is going to be 8, so it's going to be 16. So put that in the calculator, and we get 96. And you might want to write down right here, D equals diagonal. Okay. For example 2, I'm going to do a kite. Oops, I should have left more room. Oh well. And I'm going to say this is 5. Let's do that. So this is going to be 1/2. My diagonal 1 is 10, and my diagonal 2 is 9. So 1/2, 10 times 9 is 45. And that is area of quadrilaterals. Okay, sorry, this is going to be a long video. Next one we're going to do is area of triangles. So let me zoom out. My next page in my notes looks like this. Okay. Sorry, it's lopsided. Okay, so the formula y'all know by heart for area of triangles is area equals 1/2 base times height. So I'm going to do 3 different examples for this one. Oops, I meant meters, not centimeters. Okay, so for this example, it's 1/2. What's my base? 7. What's my height? Oops, I forgot to tell you that one. Is 4. So 1/2, 7 times 4 is 14 meters squared. Example 2. Okay, again, area is 1/2. What's my base here? Now I know 7.5 is on the bottom, but remember, base and height need the right angle. So your base is going to be 4.5 and your height is 6. I could flop them around, that's not a big issue. And that gives me 13.5 yards squared. Last but not least, my base right here, I don't have a height because I need a right angle. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to tell you that there's that. Now, 1/2, what is my base? Of your actual triangle, it's only 2. I know to the height it's 4, but again, when we were over here on the parallelogram, we did not include that little piece because I want the base of the parallelogram. I want the base of the triangle. But what's my height with that right angle? So those end up canceling, and this ends up with 3 feet squared. So 2 more formulas that are kind of new, that are very new. You're going to use this for the next 3 years. If you're only given sides, this is called Huron's formula. So over here, yeah, you were given 3 sides, but you had an angle. Yeah, you were given the sides, but you had a right angle. You are going to use Huron's formula when you have no angles. So Huron's formula, it's going to seem scary. It's not as scary as it looks. It's S times S minus A times S minus B times S minus C. And you're probably like, what? But S is just your perimeter divided by 2. Now, if this is your triangle, you're given an A, B, and C. You're given 3 sides. So add up your 3 sides and divide it by 2. So we're going to do 2 examples. Now first you're going to have to find S. So what's 2 plus 6 plus 5? Divide it by 2, that gives me 6.5. Now that I know my S, I'm just going to plug in. 6.5 is my S. Then I got to do S minus each side. So what's 6.5 minus 2? 6.5 minus 6. And 6.5 minus 5. And because they're all decimals, it would give you, you can't simplify the radical. So you can do this all in your calculator. Oh, 6.5 times 4.5 times 0.5 times 1.5. And we always round to the thousandths, so 4.684. Oops, and don't forget your units squared. Now another example is, what if I tell you, oh, let's do a different, oops, sorry, my phone, let me turn that off. Alright, what if, no, let's not do 6, let me change that number to, let's do 4. And I'm going to tell you this is an equilateral triangle. Well, if I know that's 4, then this is 4 and this is 4. So S, 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So now I'm going to do 6 times 6 minus 2, or 4 is 2, 6 minus 4 is 2, and 6 minus 4 is 2. So these are all not decimals, so I can just do in my calculator, 6 times 6 times 6 times, 6 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 48. This gives me the square root of 48. Now, I can simplify that because that is 16 times 3. And what is the square root of 16? 4 square roots of 3. So no decimals if it's a perfect number. Last thing for triangles I'm going to teach you is if instead of sides you're given a side, an angle, and a side in between. Now this is if your angle is not 90 degrees, because then you have a base times height. We call this side angle side formula. And it's going to look intimidating. Just like the other one, it wasn't that bad though. 1/2 BC sine of A. Now, remember, your B is your side. Your C is your side. Now this was A over here, right? But I'm going to do the angle A right there because it's in the middle of the two sides. So let's do 2 examples. Okay. If I give you a triangle, I have side, an angle, and a side, 2 sides, and an angle in between. So I'm going to do area equals 1/2 my B, one of your sides. It doesn't have to be B and C. My other side, and my sine of my angle. Now, this one has to be a decimal because you're doing you're doing sine, SOHCAHTOA. The biggest reason people get this wrong, they forget to make sure their calculator's in degrees. So just make sure that. I'm going to do 1/2, 10, 14, sine of 71. And so my area is 66.186 units squared. Now I'm going to throw in a little loop. For example 2, what if I give you a parallelogram? And this is actually like number 26 on your Quadrilaterals homework. If I tell you that this is 115 and this is 35 and 20. I have 2 sides and an angle. Is it a triangle? Well, when in doubt, can I make a triangle right there? Totally. And if my formula is 1/2 BC sine of A, but I have 2 triangles, couldn't I multiply this by 2? And wouldn't that get rid of my 1/2? So for a parallelogram, you would just do BC sine of A. No 1/2 because it's 2 triangles. What's one side? What's my other side? And then sine of the angle. So I'm just going to do that in my calculator. And I get the area is 634.415 units squared. Alright, we're almost done. I know this is a long video. Last but not least, so that was what we learned on Thursday. Last but not least was what we learned on Friday. Just want to let you know that the review for the retest, if you failed, was on Monday, and the retest is going to be on Tuesday. So Miss Dang's room and my room. Okay, so if the base of a rectangle is 6 times its height and the perimeter of the rectangle is 70 centimeters, what is the area? So if I have a rectangle, my base is 6 times my height. so 6 times h. My height we're just going to call h. If the perimeter is 70, well, how do I find perimeter? Add up all the sides. So this is 6h and this is h. That gives me 14 h's. How do I find h? Divide by 14. Oh, wrong thing. So then my h is 5. Cool. But I'm asked for the area. How do you find area? What's my base going to be? Well, if that's 5, that's 30. What's my height going to be? What's 30 times 5? Nope, I wrote that wrong. 150 centimeters squared. Hopefully I didn't go too fast on that. Okay. Today we're going to talk about composite figures, or today we learned composite figures. Again, if you were absent on Friday or if you just didn't understand. Composite figures are basically multiple shapes put together. So here's a very basic composite figure. I like to use highlighters when I deal with composite figures. You could see this multiple ways. You could probably see a line here, so you see a rectangle and a square. Some of you might see a line here, so you can see a rectangle and a rectangle. Or some of you might see three quadrilaterals right here. So I'm going to do my particular favorite here. I'm going to draw a line here. And the area of this would be base times height. So it's actually a square. 4 times 4. This is 16 centimeters squared. And then I have my other rectangle. And this base is 4 right there and 5, so that's 9. And my height is 2, so that gives me 18 centimeters squared. What do I do with those? Well, I add them together. 16 plus 18 is 34 centimeters squared. So that's super basic. If I asked you to find perimeter, you would just do 4 plus 4 plus 6. We said that whole thing was 9 plus 2 plus 5. And when we do that, we get 30 centimeters. And it's not squared because it's perimeter. Okay? For this one, I want you to find the area of this. I have a semicircle and I have a triangle. So let's do the semicircle first. So the area of a circle is pi r squared. But right here, I have semi, so I'm going to do 1/2 pi r squared. What is my r? The diameter is 8. My r is 4. So this is going to be 1/2 pi 4 squared. Well, 4 squared is 16, and half of 16 gives me 8 pi inches squared. But that's just my semicircle. Now I have to do my triangle. Well, the triangle is 1/2 BH. Well, 1/2, what's my base? 8. What is my height? How can I find the height? What do I know about this whole thing is 14. What is this right here? It's a radius. So this is 4. So if the top part is 4, what's the height? 10. So 1/2 8 times 10 gives me 40 inches squared. Now I need to add these together. They're not like terms, and I want you to give me exact answers. So then I'm going to get 8 pi plus 40 inches squared. Okay. Number 3. What do I have here? Well, I have a rectangle. My base is 14. My height is 6. And 14 times 6 gives me 84 centimeters squared. But I also have semicircles. So, I have 2 semicircles, so would you agree that that gives me 1 circle? So then I could just do pi r squared. Instead of 1/2 and then times 2 is the same thing. So what's my r? Be careful, the diameter is 6, so my r is 3. And what's 3 squared? 9 pi. So what do I do to these two things? I add them. So it's going to be 9 pi plus 84 centimeters squared. Now you could put 84 first, it doesn't matter. On your homework tonight, you also were asked for perimeter. So for perimeter, I'm going to use an orange. I have this as 14. I have this as 14. How do I find this side? Well, how do you find perimeter of a circle? Use circumference. So circumference is 2 pi r, or pi d. Well, if my radius is 3, 2 times pi times 3 is 6 pi. Now, do you agree this is only half a circle? So I could divide this by 2, but I have another one, so I don't need to do that. I can just leave it 6 pi, because technically that makes a full circle. So then 14 plus 6 pi gives me 28 plus 6 pi. And it's perimeter, so it is just centimeters. All right, I'm almost done. You're also going to be asked to find the area, sorry about that, the area of the shaded region. If the length of the rectangle is 10 centimeters and the height is 4 centimeters. So we need to find area of the big. Which I hope we can all do that very quickly and say that it's 40 centimeters squared. And then I want to find area of the shaded. So I'm not going to subtract these shaded areas. I'm going to subtract the white areas. And if you notice, I have triangles. How many triangles do I have? I have 4 of them. So real quick off to the side, I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry, 5 of them. Triangles are, so I'm going to do minus 5 times whatever the area. These are all congruent triangles, I can tell you that. 1/2 base. Well, how do I figure out the base, or each base? Well, it tells me if this is 1 inch, then so is this, and this. Excuse me. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are shaded. So how much is left over for the not shaded? 4. But I have 2 not shaded, so this is going to be 2 and 2. So my base is 2. What is my height? 4. Therefore, those cancel out. My area of my triangle is 4 centimeters squared. 5, because there are 5 triangles, times 4 gives me 20. And 40 minus 20 is 20 centimeters squared. Okay. Last one I do with you before I help you out with a little bit of home problems. The area of the big, 6 times 12 is 72. Minus the area of the not shaded. Well, this is a triangle. And it's going to be 1/2. What's my base? Well, if I know this is 6, then I know the height of the triangle is 6. It's a 30, so that's going to be a 60. Go around the 60, I get 12. Go around the 90, I get 6 squared roots of 3. so that's my base. 1/2 times 6 times 6 is 18 square roots of 3. And I'm going to leave it like that because I want an exact answer. All right, now your homework is a half sheet. I'm going to do number 13 and 14 for you just because they are a little bit more difficult. 13 is not too hard, but it's hard to see how to get the answer. You got to see one thing to get the answer. So, for 13, I know some of you are going to be like, oh, well, I can make a rectangle and a triangle, and then you have 2 trapezoids. You can do all kinds of things. But the easiest way to answer this would be to split it in half. And if I split it in half, I now have parallelograms. So I know it's kind of hard to see because it's shaded. But what's my base? 12. What's my height? Now the whole thing is 8, so the height would be 4. And what's 12 times 4? Now that's just for this one. What would I do for this one? The same thing. So you'd also get 48. And 48 plus 48 gives me 96 units squared. Now number 14 is a little weird. This is a rhombus because they're all the same. But how would I find the area? Now rhombus is diagonal times diagonal. I could do the diagonals here, but it would be a lot of work and a lot of SOHCAHTOA figuring these out. It's kind of ugly. I have a side, an angle, and a side. Don't you remember doing this problem? It's the same thing. So instead of doing 1/2, I'm going to do BC sine of A. No 1/2 because it's a parallelogram. What's one of my sides? 27. The other, 27. And then sine of my angle, 125. Now in your calculator, you get that. I need to subtract my shaded area. So, to get that, it's base times height. So I'm going to go up and then subtract my base, which is 24, times my height, which is 12.5. Oops. And so my answer is 297.162 units squared. Nope, I guess I don't need to do that, but whatever. Alright, if you have any questions, you can email me or send me a text on Remind. I'm sorry this was so long, but I hope that helped those of you that are confused. We have a quiz next Wednesday and a test next Friday over this. We just have one more new thing to learn.